Mama hasn't opened her eyes since last night. The girl's voice cracked like dry wood snapping under a boot. Mister, please. Mama hasn't opened her eyes since last night. The cowboy froze mid-step. Dust swirled around his boots as the wind cut through the valley, sharp and cold. He had been riding hard since dawn, following a trail that wasn't even his business anymore. Just another job that paid enough to keep his ranch alive another month. He hadn't planned on stopping. Hadn't planned on hearing a child sound older than she should. He turned slowly. She stood at the edge of the road, barefoot, dressed torn at the hem, clutching the sleeve of a boy no more than 6. Her hair was tangled, her face streaked with dirt and dried tears. Behind them sat a broken-down wagon. One wheel collapsed inward like a wounded animal. A woman lay inside, still as stone, her skin pale against a threadbare blanket. The cowboy dismounted without a word. He crouched, lowering himself to the girl's level. His face was weathered, beard thick with dust, eyes hardened by years of loss and long miles alone. Men called him Eli Carter, some with respect, others with resentment. He didn't correct them when they whispered, "That rich rancher who bought half the valley." He didn't explain how well felt empty when you buried everyone you loved. "How long she been like this?" he asked quietly. The girl swallowed. "Since the moon was high. I shook her. I cried. She didn't wake up." The boy squeezed his sister's hand harder. Eli stood and stepped toward the wagon. He checked the woman's pulse, then her breathing. Faint, too faint. Fever burned beneath her skin like fire beneath ash. "She needs help," he said. "We tried," the girl whispered. "The town said we had no money. The doctor wouldn't even come outside." Eli's jaw tightened. That town sat less than 2 miles away. Same town that drank whiskey in his saloon. Same town that took his donations at church with smiling faces and bowed heads. He lifted the woman carefully, settling her against the saddle. "You're coming with me." The girl blinked. "Where?" "My ranch." The children exchanged a look. Fear, hope, disbelief tangled together. "You can ride with me," Eli said. "Both of you." They didn't hesitate. By nightfall, the ranch lights burned bright against the dark plains. Eli's house wasn't small. Wide porch, solid beams, a place built by a man who planned to grow old in it. He hadn't planned on laughter echoing again, or children's footsteps, or a woman breathing shallow breaths in his guest room. He worked through the night. Cold cloths, water by the spoon, whispered prayers he hadn't spoken in years. The girl, Lila, refused to sleep. She sat by her mother's bed, eyes fixed on her chest rising and falling. "Don't leave me," Lila whispered. "Please don't." Eli stood in the doorway, feeling like an intruder in something sacred and fragile. By dawn, the fever broke. The woman's eyes fluttered. "Mama?" Lila gasped. A faint voice answered. "Lila?" The girl collapsed into sobs, clutching her mother like she might vanish if released. Eli turned away, throat tight. 2 days passed, then 3. The woman, Sarah, grew stronger. She learned where she was and who had brought her there. She thanked Eli with tears she tried to hide. "We'll leave as soon as I can walk," she said. "I won't be a burden." "You're not," Eli replied. "You can stay until you're ready." But the town noticed. By the end of the week, whispers followed him into church. Men watched his ranch from horseback. A letter arrived, sealed with a county mark. Notice of property review. Eli read it once. Then again. They weren't grateful. They were angry. Angry that a woman they turned away had survived. Angry that a man who already had too much had taken in people with nothing. That night, Lila stood on the porch, staring into the dark. "Mr. Eli?" she asked softly. "Yes, sweetheart." "Are we in trouble?" Eli looked out across his land, wide, quiet, beautiful, and suddenly under threat. He didn't answer right away. Far off, riders moved beneath the moon. And for the first time since the children arrived, Eli realized something chilling. Saving them was only the beginning. "They don't want you here." The riders didn't come close that first night. They stayed just far enough to be seen. Eli Carter stood on the porch of his ranch house, lantern in one hand, the other resting near his belt. The wind carried the low sound of hooves and murmured voices from the edge of his property. Shadows moved against the hills, deliberate and patient, like wolves waiting for weakness. Inside the house, Lila pressed her face to the window. "Mr. Eli," she whispered. "Those men, they were in town." Eli didn't look back. "Go sit with your mama." "But now." She obeyed, though fear clung to her like smoke. Eli stayed there until the riders turned away. Only then did he extinguish the lantern and step inside. Sarah was awake, propped against pillows, her face pale but alert. She had been strong once. Eli could see it in her posture, in the way her eyes still held quiet fire, but life had carved deep lines of exhaustion into her. "They followed us," she said. "Yes." "They'll come again." "Yes." She closed her eyes. "I knew this would happen." Eli frowned. "You knew?" Sarah hesitated, then nodded. "We didn't just lose our wagon. We lost more than that." She motioned for him to sit. It started months ago. Sarah and her husband Thomas had worked a small stretch of land near the river. It wasn't rich, but it was theirs. Then the county came, said the land was needed, said there were debts Thomas had never known about. Papers appeared, real enough to ruin a man, false enough to damn him. "They took everything," Sarah said. "The land, the house." Thomas tried to fight it. Her voice shook. He didn't survive the winter. Lila stiffened at her mother's side, fingers curling into the blanket. "They told us to leave town," Sarah continued. "Said we were trouble. Said if I kept talking, they'd take the children." Eli felt something dark settle in his chest. "And the doctor?" he asked. Sarah laughed softly, bitter. "The doctor answers to the men with money." Silence filled the room. Eli stood slowly. "What you're describing is theft. They call it law." Eli's eyes hardened. "Then the law is crooked." The next morning, the town came to Eli, not with guns, with papers. 3 men rode up just after breakfast. Sheriff Harlan, Judge Whitmore, and a banker named Cole who smiled too much. They dismounted like they owned the land already. "Eli Carter," the sheriff called. "Mind if we talk?" Eli stepped down from the porch. "You're talking." Judge Whitmore adjusted his coat. "We've received reports that you're harboring individuals involved in an ongoing legal dispute." Eli crossed his arms. "A sick woman and 2 children?" Cole chuckled. "That woman is a claimant in a forfeiture case." "She's a widow?" Eli snapped. Whitmore's smile thinned. "Nevertheless, she is required to return to town." "No," Eli said. The word fell heavy. Sheriff Harlan shifted. "Eli, don't make this difficult. You made it difficult when you let a woman nearly die on the road." Cole's eyes hardened. "You think your money puts you above the law." Eli stepped closer. "No, I think it shows me how broken it is." Whitmore cleared his throat. "You have until sundown tomorrow to release them into county custody. And if I don't," the sheriff's voice dropped, "then we'll take them." They rode away without another word. That night, Lila didn't sleep. She packed what little they had. 2 dresses, a cracked hairbrush, her brother's wooden horse. Eli found her by the door. "What are you doing?" he asked gently. She looked up, eyes wet but steady. "We can't stay. They'll hurt you." Eli crouched. "Listen to me, Lila. You are not a problem to be solved. But everyone says we are. Everyone is wrong." Her lip trembled. "They took Papa because Mama spoke up." Eli felt the weight of every mile he'd ridden alone. "They won't take anyone here," he said. "Not while I'm breathing." Sundown came with blood-red skies. Hooves thundered. More this time. Eli stood in the yard as lanterns approached, rifles slung casually, confidence riding with them. Sarah watched from the window, heart hammering. Sheriff Harlan dismounted. "Last chance, Eli." Eli didn't move. "You step 1 foot closer, and this becomes something you can't undo." Cole sneered. "You think one man can stop us?" A small voice rang out behind Eli. "You're liars." Lila stepped onto the porch. "They didn't owe you anything," she shouted. "You just wanted what we had." The men froze. Sheriff Harlan's face darkened. Get that child inside. Eli raised his hand. No one touches her. Cole's smile vanished. You're making a mistake. He nodded to the sheriff. The men advanced. Eli's grip tightened. And then, a rifle cocked from the hill behind the house. Not Eli's. Another. Then another. Voices called out. Step away from the children. Men emerged from the darkness. Ranchers, workers. Faces Eli recognized. People who had been wronged. People who had been silent too long. The sheriff hesitated. Judge Whitmore whispered, "This is getting out of hand." Eli didn't smile. "Not anymore," he said. But deep in the crowd, someone slipped away into the dark, riding hard toward town, carrying a message that would change everything. Because the men Eli faced tonight weren't the ones truly in charge, and they were about to answer. You don't know who you're standing against. The men on the hill didn't lower their rifles. Neither did the men in the yard. For a long moment, the night held its breath. Sheriff Harlan glanced from the armed ranchers behind Eli to the porch where Lila stood trembling but unflinching. Sweat slid down his temple despite the cold. "This isn't how things are done," Judge Whitmore said sharply, though his voice lacked authority now. Eli didn't look at him. His eyes were fixed on the shadows beyond the lantern light, on the faces of men who had come not because of him, but because they were tired of swallowing injustice. "They were never done right," Eli said. "You just got used to doing them quietly." Cole stepped forward, anger replacing his polished calm. "You think a few angry farmers change anything? You think this ends well?" Eli finally turned to him. "I think it ends honest." The word stung. Cole laughed, sharp and humorless. "Honest." He leaned closer. "You don't know who you're standing against." Before Eli could answer, hoofbeats thundered from the road. Fast, urgent. A rider burst into the lantern light, breathless, eyes wild. He leaned low over his horse, shouting before he even stopped. "They're coming!" Sheriff Harlan's face drained of color. "Who's coming?" The rider swallowed. "Mr. Blackwood's men." All of them. Silence fell like a drop coffin lid. Sarah felt it from inside the house. A cold certainty spread through her chest. She had heard that name whispered like a curse since the day Thomas died. Blackwood, the man who didn't ride into town. The man who didn't need to. Eli felt the shift instantly. The sheriff straightened, authority snapping back into place like a mask reclaimed. "This gathering is unlawful," he barked. "Disperse immediately." The ranchers hesitated. Some lowered their rifles. Eli didn't. "Who is Blackwood?" he asked. Cole's mouth twisted into something close to pity. "The man who owns the river, the land deeds, the judge's debt, the sheriff's badge." Judge Whitmore said nothing. "That land Sarah's husband fought for?" Eli pressed. Cole nodded. Blackwood wanted it. And when he couldn't buy it, he took it. Eli exhaled slowly. Everything sharpened into focus. The forged papers, the closed doors, the doctor's refusal. "How many others?" Eli asked. Cole shrugged. "Enough to keep the valley profitable." By dawn, the ranchers were gone. Not because they wanted to leave, but because they had families, homes, debts. Fear works best when it's familiar. Eli stood alone in the yard as the last lantern disappeared. Inside the house, Sarah pressed Lila and her brother close, her heart pounding so loud she was sure the walls could hear it. "They're not going to stop," Sarah whispered. Eli nodded. "No, they'll take the children." Eli turned to her, not without a fight. She shook her head. "You don't understand. Blackwood doesn't fight fair." "I know men like him," Eli said. "They rely on silence." Sarah's eyes filled. "Then why am I still afraid?" "Because silence has worked for a long time." The next day, the law came again. This time it was official. 2 wagons, 6 deputies, papers stamped and signed. Sheriff Harlan didn't meet Eli's eyes as he read aloud. By order of the county, Sarah Whitaker and her minor children are to be remanded into protective custody pending investigation. "Protective?" Eli repeated flatly. Sarah stepped forward. "You mean prison?" This is for their safety, Harlan said, too quickly. Lila grabbed Eli's hand. He felt her shaking. You don't have the right, Eli said. Harlan sighed. Blackwood does. The name hung between them. Eli looked at Sarah. She was pale but composed now, something hard and resolved settling over her fear. If I go, she said quietly, promise me one thing. Eli clenched his jaw. You're not going. Promise me, she insisted. He met her eyes. Promise me you won't let them make my children disappear. Something cracked inside him. I promise. She nodded, then bent to her children. Stay together. Listen to Mr. Eli. Lila's voice broke. Mama, don't. Deputies stepped forward. Eli moved. It happened fast. A shove, a shouted order. A rifle but swung. Eli hit the ground hard, stars exploding behind his eyes. By the time he forced himself up, Sarah was being pulled toward the wagon. Mama! Lila screamed, running forward. A deputy grabbed her arm. Eli roared. He tackled the man, sending both of them into the dirt. Chaos erupted, shouting, boots, hands grabbing. Then a gunshot cracked the air. Everything stopped. Sheriff Harlan stood frozen, smoking pistol in hand. He hadn't meant to fire. The silence was deafening. Slowly, Eli stood, blood running from his temple. You just crossed a line, he said. Harlan's hand shook. Get them in the wagon. Sarah was thrown inside. The doors slammed shut. The wagons rolled away. Lila collapsed to her knees, screaming until her voice vanished into sobs. Eli held her as the dust settled. And in that moment, something in him changed forever. That night, Eli rode, not toward town, toward the river, toward Blackwood. The land grew darker, heavier, as if it knew what waited ahead. The river estate rose from the mist like a fortress. Fences high, guards posted, windows glowing with stolen comfort. Eli dismounted and walked to the gate. A guard laughed. You lost. Eli lifted his chin. I'm here to see Blackwood. The guard scoffed. No one sees Blackwood. The gate opened anyway. A man stood beyond it, tall, calm, dressed in fine wool, eyes cold as cut stone. I do, the man said. Eli felt the weight of him instantly. This was not a bully. This was a planner. Blackwood smiled faintly. Eli Carter, I wonder when you'd come. You took a mother from her children, Eli said. Blackwood clasped his hands behind his back. I enforced the law. You made the law. Blackwood's smile widened. And I can unmake you. He stepped closer. You want them safe? Walk away. Leave the valley. Sign over your land. Eli's fist clenched. And if I don't, he asked. Blackwood's eyes flicked toward the house. I teach children what happens when men don't listen. Eli felt ice in his veins. Behind the mansion, a small light flickered. A child's silhouette passed the window. Eli realized with horror, Blackwood hadn't just taken Sarah. He had taken the children, too. If you speak, they die. Eli didn't move. Not when he saw the child's shadow pass the window. Not when Blackwood's guards subtly tightened their circle. Not when the iron certainty settled in his chest that this man meant every word he said. You took them, Eli said quietly. Blackwood tilted his head, studying him the way a man studies livestock. I relocated them. You kidnapped children. Blackwood smiled. I protected my investment. Eli took a step forward. Rifles rose instantly. Blackwood lifted a finger. Easy. Violence would be unfortunate. Eli's voice dropped. Where are they? Blackwood's eyes gleamed. Close enough to remind you who holds leverage. Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. You want my land, Eli said. Yes. You want me gone. Preferably broken, Blackwood replied calmly. Eli exhaled slowly. And if I sign? Blackwood leaned in, voice silk over steel. The children live quiet lives. Somewhere far from here. Their mother, too, if she behaves. And if I don't? Blackwood's smile vanished. Then accidents happen. That night, Eli didn't sleep. He sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the deed papers Blackwood had placed neatly on his table like a gift wrapped in thread. His land, his home, the last thing he had built with his own hands after burying everyone he loved. Lila's voice echoed in his mind. Are we in trouble? Outside, the valley was silent. Too silent. Fear had sunk into it like rot. At dawn, Eli rode back to his ranch. The house felt wrong the moment he stepped inside. Too quiet. He found the broken cup on the floor first, then the overturned chair, then the note, "Keep your word." His chest tightened. They came, he whispered. Neighbors had seen nothing, or claimed they hadn't. Doors closed politely. Eyes slid away. Fear had finished its work. Eli saddled his horse again, anger and dread twisting together. But he didn't ride to Blackwood. He rode to town. The church was full, not with prayer, but with gossip. Eli walked straight down the aisle, boots echoing against the wooden floor. Conversations died instantly. Judge Whitmore sat stiffly in the front pew. Eli stopped beside him. Where are they? Eli asked. Whitmore swallowed. I don't know what you're talking about. You signed the order. Whitmore's hands trembled. I did what I had to. Eli leaned closer. You signed a child's death warrant. Whitmore's eyes flicked around the room. Lower your voice. No, Eli said. You've been quiet long enough. The sheriff stood. Eli, this isn't the place. Eli turned. You fired a gun at my home. The room erupted in murmurs. Eli raised his voice. This town let a woman die on the road. Let children be stolen. All so one man could own more land. Cole shifted uncomfortably. Say his name, Eli demanded. No one spoke. Eli slammed his fist against the pew. Blackwood. Gasps rippled through the church. The sheriff's face went pale. You don't know what you're doing. I know exactly what I'm doing, Eli said, and I know you're all afraid. A woman stood near the back, shaking. He took my brother's farm. A man beside her whispered, My father, too. Voices began to rise, hesitant at first, then louder. Stories spilled out like blood from a wound long cupboard. Whitmore collapsed into the pew, head in his hands. Eli felt it then. The shift, fear-breaking. That night, Eli returned to Blackwood's estate. Not alone. Dozens stood behind him. Farmers, ranch hands, widows, men and women who had nothing left to lose. Blackwood watched from his balcony, wine glass in hand. You're making a spectacle, Blackwood called. Eli stepped forward. You made a grave mistake. Blackwood laughed. You think mobs scare me? No, Eli said. Truth does. Torches flared. Someone shouted, Give us back our children. Blackwood's smile faltered for the first time. Then a scream cut through the night. Hi, sharp, Lila's voice. Eli's heart nearly stopped. A guard dragged her onto the balcony. One hand clamped over her mouth. Blackwood raised his voice. Enough. The crowd froze. You want justice? Blackwood said calmly. Drop your weapons. Walk away, or the girl dies. Lila's eyes found Eli's. Tears streaked her face, but she didn't cry out. She shook her head once. Don't. Eli felt his knees weaken. Blackwood leaned close to her ear. Last chance. Eli stepped forward. I'll sign, he said hoarsely. Let her go. Lila screamed. No. Blackwood smiled. Wise choice. Eli reached into his coat, not for a weapon, for the deed. But as he unfolded the papers, a sound rose behind him. Hoofbeats. Fast. Dozens. Then hundreds. Lanterns lit the hills like stars falling to earth. A voice rang out from the darkness. Step away from the child. Blackwood turned sharply. The sheriff rode into view, followed by deputies, reporters, and men carrying ledgers and documents. Whitmore dismounted, pale but determined. It's over, the judge said. We have records, witnesses, confessions. Blackwood's smile shattered. You fools, he hissed. You'll burn with me. But the crowd surged forward. The guard loosened his grip. Lila slipped free. She ran. straight into Eli's arms. Blackwood stepped back, his hands closing around him. For the first time, fear touched his eyes. But as the torches closed in, Eli knew one thing. This wasn't finished yet, because monsters never fall quietly. They stayed. Blackwood didn't scream when they took him. That was the most terrifying thing about him. He stood straight as the deputies closed in, hands clasped behind his back, eyes calm as if he were merely stepping into another negotiation. Even as shackles snapped around his wrists, he wore the same faint smile that had ruled the valley for years. "You think this ends me?" he asked softly. Eli met his gaze. "No, I think it ends your silence." The crowd pressed closer, torches crackling, anger rising like heat from the ground. Men and women who had bowed their heads for years now looked Blackwood in the eye. Sheriff Harlan cleared his throat. "Mr. Blackwood, you're under arrest for fraud, kidnapping, coercion, and conspiracy to commit." Blackwood laughed. "By whose authority?" Harlan hesitated. Judge Whitmore stepped forward. "By mine," he said, voice shaking but firm. "And by every name I signed when I should have said no." Blackwood's smile vanished. For the first time, he looked small. They found Sarah in the east wing of the estate, locked in a room with barred windows. Pale, bruised, alive. When Lila ran into her arms, the sound that tore from Sarah's chest wasn't a scream or cry. It was something deeper, something raw and wordless. She held her children like the world might still try to take them. Eli stood in the doorway, eyes burning. "You kept your promise," Sarah whispered to him. He shook his head. "We all did." The trial didn't happen in whispers. It happened in daylight. Blackwood's ledgers were laid bare. Forged deeds, bribes, names of officials who had traded conscience for comfort. The valley learned just how much had been stolen from it, and how, quietly, Cole fled before the verdict. Sheriff Harlan resigned before he could be tried. Judge Whitmore stood in court and testified until his voice broke, naming every favor, every fear, every signature he wished he could take back. When the sentence came, the courtroom was silent. Blackwood was found guilty on all counts. As he was led away, he looked once more at Eli. "This land will eat you alive," he said coldly. "It always does." Eli didn't respond. He didn't need to. Spring came slow that year. The ranch changed. Children's laughter returned to its fields. Lila learned to ride before she learned to read properly. Her brother chased chickens and called himself a cowboy. Sarah worked beside Eli, rebuilding what had been broken, not just buildings, but trust. One evening, as the sun dipped low, Lila sat on the fence beside Eli. "You didn't have to keep us," she said. Eli smiled faintly. "I know. Why did you?" Eli watched the horizon. "Because once someone saved me, and I didn't stay." She tilted her head. "Did you regret it?" "Every day." She slid her small hand into his. "We're not leaving," she said firmly. He swallowed. The town began to change too. Land was returned. Debts forgiven. People spoke more openly. Doors stayed open longer. Justice wasn't perfect, but it was no longer silent. On the anniversary of that first night, the church bells rang, not for warning, but for remembrance. Eli stood on the porch as Sarah joined him. "They wanted us gone," she said. "And now," she smiled softly, "now we belong." Eli looked at the children running through the fields, at the valley breathing easier, at a future he never expected to carry again. "They stayed," he said quietly, "and for the first time in a long time." "So, did he?"